May's Brexit deal and her premiership hang by the flimsiest of threads. Good evening. Today is Judgment Day. For 4 months after the Prime Minister first delayed a vote on her Brexit deal for fear of a catastrophic loss, she has run out of road and run out of time. MPs are in the division lobbies right now. During the course of the day, events cascaded against Theresa May. First, the Attorney General said her new agreement last night meant the legal risk remained unchanged. The danger still stands of Britain being stuck indefinitely in the backstop intended to prevent a hard border in Ireland. Then the Brexiteers on her backbenches and her allied MPs from Northern Ireland, the DUP, gave the thumbs down. This afternoon, losing her voice, she made her final desperate plea to MPs to back her.
The danger for those of us who want to deliver, to have faith with the British public and deliver on their vote for Brexit, is that if this vote is not passed tonight, if this deal is not passed, then Brexit could be lost.
Tonight, if she is defeated again, can her government, can Brexit itself survive? In this special programme tonight, we will bring you the result of this key vote and all the reaction. Now, Theresa May's chances of winning the Brexit vote tonight were in deep trouble from mid-morning. The hammer blow came with the Attorney General's advice that, despite her late-night deal in Strasbourg, the risk of the United Kingdom being indefinitely trapped in the backstop had not gone away. By the time the Prime Minister stood up in the Commons this afternoon to implore MPs for their support, she had already lost not just her voice, but also the backing of many on her own side, as well as the Democratic Unionist Party. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is with me now. Gary.
Well, extraordinary scenes in there, because it does look as though we're about to see another historic moment. Theresa May was defeated by 230 votes last time this thing happened. This time round, it's probably going to be a defeat of a scale of an order, a large three-figure number beginning with 1. The sort of stuff that normally hurtles you into resignation place, but might not here. We don't know what Theresa May is going to jump up and say at the end of this vote. She'll say something, but she didn't give a clue to cabinet members when they were in there as to what it is she'll say. There's some speculation tonight she might say, to try and at least buy herself out of some trouble tomorrow and the day after, she might say that she's going to go to Europe and herself ask for some kind of extension to the Brexit date in order that Parliament doesn't impose one on her in a vote. And that would help her escape the whole issue of a free vote, which could see her and her Chancellor Exchequer on the day of the spring statement going through different voting lobbies. So she is trying to avoid that, but nobody knows quite what she's going to do. It was a day that started a little more promisingly for her. Brexit-leaning newspapers giving her a little bit of space, a bit of unusual friendly coverage, and then the dominoes started to fall. The Attorney General, the DUP withdrawing their support, and automatically, axiomatically, very predictably afterwards, the ERG faction within the Tory party, most of them pulling away as well. So she hasn't got enough converts to really transform this situation. It's absolutely dire. Another Theresa May day of reckoning.
17 days to the Brexit date, and Theresa May left Downing Street to issue a rallying call to Tory MPs at a private meeting in Parliament.
She looked tired because she got back from Strasbourg at 2 in the morning. She's chaired cabinet. She's addressed a party meeting.
At last night's meeting in Strasbourg, the EU said the latest extra legal documents were all the UK would get from them.
In politics, sometimes you get a second chance. It is what we do with this second chance that counts, because there will be no third chance.
In view of the comments made by the European Union that this was it, there would be no third opportunity, I do think that any defeat today will be very damaging to the Prime Minister's position.
At this morning's cabinet, some ministers did raise the idea of running this vote a third time, maybe even this week. Everyone pretty much accepting defeat was coming tonight. Not least because the Attorney General's legal opinion on the changes squeezed out of the EU didn't remotely match the promises for a radical rethink made after the last defeat.
Let me make it clear. The legal risk, as I set it out in my letter of the 13th of November, remains unchanged.
After some encouraging morning headlines, those words snuffed out the government's hopes. The Attorney-General was saying that the changes to the deal left the risk of getting stuck in the backstop unchanged. The flood of returning rebel Tory MPs Theresa May desperately needed didn't seem to be happening.
You were the first out of the trap saying, right, I'm with you now, Prime Minister, you've done enough. Is it feeling a bit lonely? I can't see many people around you.
Well, let's wait and see. It
feels a bit lonely at the moment, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, but there we are. Sometimes you have to lead rather than be led.
When the Prime Minister opened the debate on her deal, it was soon clear she had nearly lost her voice.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.
Not again, one MP shouted, remembering the conference coughing fit.
OK, you may say that, but you should hear Jean-Claude Juncker's voice as a result of our conversation.
One new convert was paraded before the Prime Minister, but she knew there was nothing like enough.
Vote, and today I will support it. Forgive me, Prime Minister. Forgive me unenthusiastically, but I will support it because I completely agree with her that there is the danger that Brexit will be lost.
Let us prove beyond all doubt that we believe democracy comes before party, faction or personal ambition. The time has come to deliver on the instruction we were given. The time has come to back this deal, and I commend this motion to the House.
After 3 months of running down the clock, the Prime Minister has, despite very extensive delays, achieved not a single change to the withdrawal agreement. Not one single word has changed. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the substance, literally nothing has changed.
When I was in industry,
Warring Remainers and Brexiteers will again unite briefly tonight, as they did in January, walking through the same parliamentary lobby to defeat Theresa May's deal.
The risk from a Eurosceptic point of view is that not backing Mrs May's deal leads ultimately to no Brexit. The risk from the pro-European point of view is that not backing Mrs May's deal leads to us leaving without a withdrawal agreement. What is interesting is that neither side believes the threat that is made by the other. So the pro-Europeans think that we won't leave without a deal, and people like me think that there won't be no Brexit. One of us is going to turn out to be wrong.
To prove the point, some of his rivals hoping defeat tonight brings a long delay to Brexit in its wake.
We may have to contest the European elections. I mean, I don't think that's the end of the world. We're a democratic state. If we're part of the EU still at the time, we should go ahead and do it.
Some of your colleagues in your own party might think that is akin to the end of the world.
Well, I am a bit troubled by the way some of my colleagues are so troubled about letting the public have a say on matters.
Time for a general election, 2/3 of Parliament would need to vote for it, and they would vote for it. I wouldn't vote against it, because if it went through, my opponent in Broxton would say, look at Charles Walker running scared of his constituents. And then we go to the people, we have a 6.5 week general election, which gets a result by early to mid-May, and then we move on again. But this is hopeless. If we don't get the deal through now, I mean, this Parliament really just does confirm that it's an absolute shower.
One cabinet minister said his central expectation now was a general election. But he didn't know who would lead the Tories into it. He said it was a horrifying thought, but just one of many scary scenarios whirring through his mind right now.
Barry Gibbon, and more from him as things unfold. But with me now is Peter Mandelson, the Labour peer, who served as a minister under Tony Blair. He's a former EU Trade Commissioner and now speaks for Open Britain, a group that campaigns for a second referendum. Peter Mandelson, do you think now, if this vote goes as is being predicted, do you think now that it's down to no deal or remain?
Well, I think the deal will have been finished off by the House of Commons tonight if the vote goes the way that everyone expects. I do not see what circumstances, what twist, what tweak, what new language can be invested in this deal to enable her to bring it back to the House of Commons. I think it will be dead. But tomorrow the House of Commons will also take a decision, I'm absolutely confident, to exclude a no-deal outcome of Brexit as well. And therefore we will be left with the same fundamental choice. We either go for a Brexit that reduces or mitigates the huge damage to our economy, to people's jobs and livelihoods, what people call a soft Brexit, or whether we're going to go the harder route, prioritise our sovereignty at the expense of our trade and the inevitable damage to our economy. That is a fundamental choice which the Prime Minister has never put either to the House of Commons or to the British people, and she's going to have to do so.
There's another fundamental, and that is that the Labour Party is in almost as big a shambles as is the government. So, and in that situation, you have a very, very difficult democratic crisis.
I honestly don't think it would be possible to be in as big a shambles as a government.
Well, we can debate who's in the bigger shambles, but you accept it is a pretty sad ship.
What I think about the Labour Party and Brexit is that it does have a clear policy, and what we need is for the leader of our party to act on the basis of that policy. And at the end of the day, when we find that there is a complete stalemate, a complete sort of deadlock in the House of Commons, you have to take this fundamental choice and issues back to the British people. And I say something else also about that. I think the only way in which any outcome of this whole debacle can be achieved with any degree of public legitimacy at all is if the British people themselves sign off the result and the outcome one way or the other, and then we all live with that. But it has, in my view, to go back to the public.
Well, you've been campaigning for a second referendum, but there is not a majority for a second referendum, so
not yet.
No.
Not yet. But
and what a dangerous thing they are anyway. Didn't we learn from Hitler? What on earth do we want to have another one?
Well, personally, I'm a believer in representative democracy. But I'm afraid that the Brexit was triggered, it was initiated by the British people in a vote, and I think they have to have the final say. They must decide one way or the other whether we're simply going to sort of walk a gangplank into thin air, or whether we're going to do so with some idea, some knowledge of what our future relationship with our biggest export market is going to be.
The other thing in the air tonight is if there's an extension, which it seems there must be, should it be short or long? Should it be a few months or should it be a couple of years?
I don't see the point of a short extension. I don't see what can be resolved in 1 or 2 months. I think what we all need to do is take a deep breath, step back and consider what the options are really for us, what the trade-offs are, what the real choices are. And the job of the government is to enable the public and Parliament to make those choices and then take them to the British people.
And who does the considering?
The people who need to consider and sign off at the end of the day. There's no alternative, in my view, but the British public.
Well, now, I don't know, one of the things which really has, I think, become awfully clear is that when it comes to leadership in both parties, there's a crisis.
Yes, I think the British people look at the whole political system and the way in which both front benches, frankly, have been leading the country through this mounting crisis and find fault with both sides. I'm a Labour man. It doesn't give me any pleasure to acknowledge that the British people don't have quite as dim a view, I think, of the Labour leadership as they do of the Prime Minister and the government, but they're not very happy with either, let's be honest.
Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, thank you very much for coming in. Right, let's go to Matt Fry, who's over there in Strasbourg. Do we get a reaction from there, or are they waiting for the vote, even though we have a pretty good idea of where it's going?
Well, John, Michel Barnier is watching up there somewhere. Guy Verhofstadt is watching over there somewhere. Everyone who can get close to a television screen is watching this result as it comes in the next few minutes. The bar is absolutely jam-packed with people doing the same thing. It's amazing what difference 24 hours can make. I mean, just yesterday evening, there was this kind of froth of excitement here in Strasbourg as Theresa May said that she was coming over to meet Jean-Claude Juncker and Donald Tusk. Then there was a real bit of excitement late at night after the press conference that maybe they had just clinched it. But then if you look carefully at Jean-Claude Juncker's face, you could detect that he looked rather tired. And it wasn't just the long lunches and dinner that he was having that day, but also the fact that perhaps he knew in his heart of hearts that this deal, this compromise, this tweak would come up against the very hard place of the ERG and the DUP. And it looks at the moment as if he was absolutely right. The point is here that if this thing is voted down in the kind of numbers that we expect tonight, here they will genuinely believe that that deal that they spent 18 months concocting is now dead. So what do they do then? Well, if there is a request for an extension of Article 50, which they also expect and which they have discussed, I'm told, the question is for how long? And will every one of the 27 member states of the EU sign up to this? And that is not a given, frankly. So you might argue, if you're a Brexiteer, that the ball has been in the EU's court. Well, it's going to be even more in the EU's court if this thing is voted down and they ask for an extension of Article 50. But all that, of course, depends on the numbers that we're about to get.
Matt Fry in Strasbourg. Now, let's just take a dip into the House of Commons itself. It is absolutely heaving. I think as many MPs as you can get in there are in there. We're waiting for this incredibly critical vote. It's due any minute. The Prime Minister is in there. She's sitting down. In the meantime, let me quickly turn to our business correspondent, Siobhan Kennedy. How are the markets responding?
Well, John, markets were first to spot really that the Attorney General's advice meant that her deal, we don't yet know, but her deal will be pretty much dead in the water. Take a look at this today after the advice was released. The pound fell something like 1.5%. It's still come back a little bit, but it is still down. It's still in the red. We wait to see what happens when we get the result in a minute. You know, and it's a new level of uncertainty, really, and that's what's prompted one of the bosses of one of the biggest business lobby groups today to appeal directly to MPs, John. He said this: businesses and the public are not ready for a messy and disorderly exit on March the 29th. Do not let that happen by accident. If we do see that vote fail, they will want to see immediately no deal taken off the table and a move to extend Article 50. Although that, John, to be fair, doesn't have them jumping for joy either. The other person who doesn't want to see a disorderly exit, of course, is the Chancellor. Amid all the mayhem, he still had his date in the diary tomorrow for the spring statement. There was good news today for January. The growth figures were up higher than expected, but he is expected to respond to some pretty hefty downgrade by the Office for Budget Responsibility for their growth forecast for the whole of 2019. They're expected to cut that forecast in half, John. Whatever happens, that will be pretty hard tomorrow for the Chancellor to spin, however hard he tries.
Siobhan, thank you for the moment. Now, Gary is still here. Gary, let's just take another look inside the House of Commons. We're waiting for this absolutely critical vote. This is a determining vote and one which we think the Prime Minister has lost.
Oh, I think she's lost it big. I've had spies in the lobby telling me that the number of Tories and DUP that were in there with Labour MPs was really quite phenomenal.
What does big mean?
Well, I think it means probably a big number, a big three-figure number that starts with 1. There weren't many converts over the course of the day. Openly, there were about 20. There might well be more than that, but she needed a lot more than that. Also, just to mention, this is a very crowded...
Just a moment, we're just going to go inside the lobby. This is a rare picture. Hannah Bardell. Amazing.
So that's one of the, yes, that's one of the snaps taken.
SNP MP
that's
there.
One of the snaps taken inside.
That's very rare.
The lobby, the no lobby, very naughty. You shouldn't really do it. And what she's trying to do with that shot is show how she's making friends with people she doesn't normally rub shoulders with.
Indeed.
She doesn't end up in a lobby with quite so many people. I'm told very interestingly as well, someone who was keeping an eye on the situation thought they only counted 3 Labour MPs in that lobby. Now remember the talk of, oh, there'll be 40 to 60 of them helping the Prime Minister out come the day of reckoning. And the Prime Minister very pointedly didn't really reach across the floor today, didn't have all the stuff about trade unions and the rest of it in her speech in the House of Commons, insofar as you could hear it. And it doesn't appear to have really reached many Labour MPs at all. There could be an independent or two like Ian Austin in the lobby there, but only 3 Labour MPs spotted. I have to tell you as well, we're looking at a crowded scene there. The House of Commons today, at times when the Prime Minister herself was speaking, was half empty. Absolutely extraordinary. There was very little atmosphere. One cabinet minister who'd been sitting on the front bench said to me, nobody is listening. And you know, when a Prime Minister is speaking on a matter of this magnitude, you expect pin-drop silence and real attention.
Right, and let's pause, Gary, for a moment. We'll go over now to Krishnan, who has got, I think, Bernard Jenkin with him. Let's see what's going on.
Yes, indeed, Conservative Brexiteer Bernard Jenkin is with me, and it's looking like a big loss for the government.
I'm afraid so.
And you helped defeat them?
I voted against the agreement. I think we've been consistent, those of us who are opposing this deal because it's a bad deal. The government said it needed to be changed, accepted a motion to replace the backstop and to get legally binding
So you don't
changes.
mind a delay now, if that is the result of what you've done?
Well, quite frankly, the agreement is so bad, I'm prepared to take my chances.
With delay, so the delay doesn't trouble you? You think you'll still get Brexit? Because that's the great fear.
I will vote against delay, but let's be absolutely clear. The people who vote for an extension are the people who are trying to stop Brexit.
Yes, there's a big fear that you've blown it tonight, though, isn't there? That there will now be a delay, that could go on and on. We could get to an election or a people's vote, and it could all be off.
Well, that's the Channel 4 version of events.
No, I'm just putting that to you. That's why a lot of your own colleagues have changed their mind. That's why people like David Davis have voted with the government tonight.
This has been a very difficult day, but in the end, we can still leave the European Union. If we get into this withdrawal agreement, we could be stuck there for a very long time, and that was the Attorney General's advice to the House of Commons, that there was no change to the risk that we could be stuck in the withdrawal agreement.
Right, well, apparently the Speaker, John Bercow, has just said they're investigating the delay in the lobby. I don't know what that's about. Is it that there are so many people in the no lobby tonight that they're struggling to get through them all?
I don't know, but it's quite
Here's the result. Here's the result. Let's go through to the House.
I can't hear, of course.
Oh, right, sorry, not the result. We'll bring it to you when it arrives. Let's just come back to this question then of what happens now. Is Theresa May finished in your mind? Has she got to go now for this next stage?
I don't sense there's any appetite in the Conservative Party to create a leadership crisis now. She's been perfectly clear what she's going to do. She's going to put choices in front of Parliament.
Let's go to the Commons and let's see what's happening.
The ayes to the right, 242. The noes to the left, 391.
The ayes to the right, 242. The noes to the left, 391. So the noes have it, the noes have it. Unlock.
150 votes. She's lost by a massive defeat, not quite as big as the last one. Gary?
Theresa May's on her feet.
Theresa May's just going to speak now.
I profoundly regret the decision that this House has taken tonight. I continue to believe that by far the best outcome is that the United Kingdom leaves the European Union in an orderly fashion with a deal. And that the deal we've negotiated is the best and indeed the only deal available. But, Mr. Speaker, I would like to set out briefly how the government means to proceed. 2 weeks ago, I made a series of commitments from this dispatch box regarding the steps we would take in the event that this House rejected the deal on offer. I stand by those commitments in full. Therefore, tonight we will table a motion for debate tomorrow to test whether the House supports leaving the European Union without a deal on the 29th of March. The Leader of the House will shortly make an emergency business statement confirming the change to tomorrow's business. This is an issue of grave importance for the future of our country. Just like the referendum, there are strongly held and equally legitimate views on both sides. For that reason, I can confirm that this will be a free vote on this side of the House. And I have personally struggled with this choice, as I'm sure many other honourable members will. I'm passionate about delivering the result of the referendum, but I equally passionately believe that the best way to do that is to leave in an orderly way with a deal. And I still believe that there is a majority in the House for that course of action. And I'm conscious also of my duties as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of the potential damage to the Union that leaving without a deal could do when one part of our country is without devolved governance. I can therefore confirm that the motion will read that this House declines to approve leaving the European Union without a withdrawal agreement and a framework on the future relationship on the 29th of March 2019, and notes that leaving without a deal remains the default in UK and EU law unless this House and the EU ratify an agreement. I will return to the House to open the debate tomorrow and to take interventions from honourable members, and to ensure the House is fully informed in making this historic decision. The Government will tomorrow publish information on essential policies which would need to be put in place if we were to leave without a deal. These will cover our approach to tariffs and to the Northern Ireland border, among other matters. If the House votes to leave without a deal on the 29th of March, it will be the policy of the Government to implement that decision. If the House declines to approve leaving without a deal on the 29th of March, the Government will, following that vote, bring forward a motion on Thursday on whether Parliament wants to seek an extension to Article 50. If the House votes for an extension, the Government will seek to agree that extension with the EU and bring forward the necessary legislation to change the exit date commensurate with that extension. But let me be clear. Voting against leaving without a deal and for an extension does not solve the problems we face. The EU will want to know what use we mean to make of such an extension. And this House will have to answer that question. Does it wish to revoke Article 50? Does it want to hold a second referendum? Or does it want to leave with a deal but not this deal? These are unenviable choices. But thanks to the decision that the House has made this evening, they are choices that must now be faced.
Point of order, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government has been defeated again by an enormous majority, and they must now accept their deal, their proposal, the one the Prime Minister has put, is clearly dead and does not have the support of this House.
Right, now let's just get the confirmation of that result. Theresa May's plan received 242 votes in favour, but 391 votes against. And that means it has lost by a majority of 149. Now tomorrow, as you heard, she's going to have a vote on no deal and a vote too on whether to extend Article 50 to allow more negotiating time. Gary.
What she's done here is gone for the route that she's basically stuck with. The plan A that she had. She hasn't done anything greatly surprising. She has given us one innovation. She's had to admit she can't actually keep her party together. It's like a wobbly shed at the moment. And she's had to admit that if she is going to have a vote tomorrow on whether Parliament wants to exit with no deal or not, she's going to have to make it a free vote. And there we raise the prospect of her and the Chancellor walking through different lobbies, all sorts of members of the government walking through different lobbies. Once you start going down this route, there is a reason you don't do it very often. It is very hard to put things back together again. She made a very interesting point as well there just then, saying that Parliament now has to tell the EU why it wants an extension. If it votes for an extension the day after, as we expect, voting against the idea of exiting with no deal. Parliament has to tell the EU. It used to be her as the interlocutor with the EU. A great moment has arrived, and nobody knows where it goes.
Thank you, Gary, for the moment. Much more from here in a moment. Let's go over now to Krishnan back in the House of Commons.
Well, joining me now is the SNP's Joanna Cherry, and Bernard Jenkins from the Conservatives is still with us. Well, where now? Parliament's going to go for delay?
Well, I mean, it's an extraordinary result tonight. She's been beaten again by 149 votes. I don't see how the government can possibly continue. It's a massive vote of no confidence in her deal.
What are you saying that the SNP will try and call a vote of no confidence now?
Well, I think what the SNP are focused on in the next 24 or 48 hours is making sure that no deal is taken off the table and making sure we get an extension to Article 50 so we can sort out this nonsense. But we want longer than 3 months. We want long enough to have a second vote. Theresa May can't get her deal through the House. If she can't get her deal through the House, she needs to take it to the whole of the United Kingdom, and she needs to give people a choice between the deal, the only deal that she's managed to get, and remaining. But I would add, Krishnan, very importantly, this time Scotland has to be given a voice in this process, and it has to be recognised that if Scotland votes to remain again, then Scotland must be given the right to hold a second independence referendum. Our Parliament has already given the First Minister a mandate to demand that.
Bernard Jenkins?
Well, all these second referendums is because people never accepted the result of the first referendum, and it seems to me that there's plenty of people who voted against the government's deal tonight who are nevertheless in favour of honouring the referendum decision that was taken in 2016.
What difference is a free vote tomorrow night going to make?
Well, what's most interesting is that the Prime Minister herself is tabling the motion against leaving without a withdrawal agreement, if I've heard that correctly. And that would seem to be a government U-turn, because the government official policy has always been if they can't get a deal, they'll leave without a deal. It's now apparently not the government's
policy. Well, the Prime Minister took note of how damaging a no-deal Brexit would be when she said that.
Well, that's her opinion and the advice she's been given, but there's plenty of contrary advice. I suspect that the House will vote against a WTO Brexit tomorrow, because most of the House of Commons, 75. I mean, a big problem here is that 75% of MPs.
So you don't feel it's slipping away. You don't feel Brexit slipping away.
Well, I don't think you're going to get this back. I don't think you're going to get this genie back in the bottle.
I think it is slipping away, and I think the polls across the country show that if people were given a second vote, they would vote to remain. But it never was there in the first place in Scotland. Scotland voted to remain in 2016, and that's whose voice. That's the voice that I'm mandated to put across.
Must leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed. Let's go to Matt now, who is in Strasbourg.
Thanks, Chris. Well, I think it's fair to say that there was no surprise here about the result in Strasbourg at the European Parliament, but there has been quite a lot of shock, because this number, 149 on the second round, is just not great, is it? Let's talk to Elmar Brok. He's a member of the Christian Democrats in the European Parliament here, and Anna Maria Corazza Bildt from Sweden and the Moderate Party. Welcome to you both. 149, second time round, down from 230. Is this deal now dead?
The deal is dead. There will be not new negotiations about that. Juncker has made it very clear yesterday, and I think we cannot change the deal. We have made a clear interpretation that the United Kingdom is not in a trap, that was legally binding, that cannot be done better. I have the feeling we can propose what you want, because the hard Brexiteers and the Remainers will not accept anything, will vote against it, because the hard Brexiteers want not to have a deal at all with the European Union, and the Remainers play until the last moment to get a referendum and something like that. It's equally worse, bad, and therefore I think this game is finished.
Do you agree? Is the deal dead?
Well, I'm very disappointed, sorry, and concerned. Now the key issue is to avoid an exit without any deal. That would be the worst case scenario. I think the European
But that's what people are preparing for here, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's damage preparing, yes, we're doing it, but it's damage control. The damage will be there anyway without a deal. First, unfortunately, for the people of the UK, but also for the rest of Europe. But I agree with Elmar. This is very, very serious. It was a good deal, the best possible on the table, and to just throw everything in the water of the channels is fairly serious now.
Okay, but there's a possibility of resurrection in the form of an extension. It is almost inevitable that Parliament will vote for an extension in a couple of days' time. Should the European Union, all 27 member states, grant that extension, and under what circumstances?
Yeah, we need to know what they want. The extension...
They want time. Depends how much time.
Yeah, I think we should grant time if there is a plan, and I think we should, absolutely, but we need to know what they want. So far, we only have known what they don't want.
Since 2 years, we do not know what the United Kingdom wants. They asked for Article 50. I have no idea, no clue what to do. There is no possibility to find a positive majority, a constructive majority in the House of Commons. There's always negative positions on my own deal.
So would you say don't grant an extension to Article 50?
But they have to give a good reason. This extension can be done until the European elections, no longer. We do not know.
To avoid a no deal. That's the best reason and the most important. We need an extension to avoid a no deal.
But Britain has no idea how to do that. There is since 2 years no proposal from Britain, zero proposal. If there's a miracle that they start to talk to each other. We do not need discussions between London and Brussels. We need discussions between London and London.
How would you feel about the fact that Britain takes part in the European Union elections in May, if that's part of an extension deal?
I would not accept that. If someone wants to leave, should not decide.
That's a democratic thing to do. You're a democratic organisation.
Someone who wants to leave should not make a decision about our future European government and not about our financial arrangements we have to do for the next 7 years. Then leave. That is not fair, it's not possible, not acceptable.
It's not all Britain's fault, is it? I mean, the European Union could have been more understanding on a number of key issues. And
I cannot agree at all to that.
You can't agree on
I cannot agree on all of that.
This is not a matter of fault. Now, 17...
You are blameless.
17 days... No, everyone... That's not the point. The point is that we're 17 days from the D-Day, and it's a time for responsibility, not for blame gaming. It's a time to put the acts together in London, to tell us what they want, what is the way forward, if they want to deliver the will of the people of the UK, if they don't want to do it. We need clear, concrete answers and solutions there. They have to stop with tactics and party politics, calculations. They have to do the national interest.
We have a joint line between 27 member states, between the institution of the European Union. Britain has no deal, and we would not accept any deal which destroys the integrity of the internal market.
We've got to leave it there. Elmar Brok, Anna Maria Corazza-Bildt, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Fascinating, although slightly depressing. Thank you very much. Well, there you heard it. They're preparing for no deal here, very seriously now. They think this current deal is dead, and as for an extension, well, that's still with the gods. Back to you, Chris.
Well, with me now is the former Conservative, now part of the independent group of MPs, Anna Soubry. We've just been hearing how Europe is preparing for no deal. Is it going that way or your way?
Well, my way is towards a people's vote, of course. That's what I want, and I'm hugely disappointed that yet again the Labour Party is absolutely sold out. No mention by Corbyn in his speech about a people's vote, and he's already now said tonight that his amendment to tomorrow's motion will be about his deal, and no mention yet again of the people's vote. He's just a complete sellout, and I'm afraid my Labour colleagues, as they are in the people's vote, have got to wake up to the fact that Jeremy Corbyn is not going to push a people's vote, as he should be doing, in the House of Commons.
Well, he still thinks he can get his kind of Brexit.
Well, he's talking out of his rear end, let's be honest about this, because he isn't. He keeps on losing it time and time again. He then calls for a general election. He's prattling around. He's doing it deliberately. We all know he's a Brexiteer. He wants us to leave the European Union. The last thing he wants is a people's vote. And you've got a conspiracy by both front benches to deny this matter going back to the British people. And it's the only thing, and it's the only way to resolve this problem, is to get it back to the British people. I know your viewers are fed up to the back teeth with the whole thing. I understand that. I understand they'll be disappointed that politicians can't sort it out. But it's right now that we know what Brexit looks like. Let's vote on something we can put to the British people with Remain on that ballot paper. And they're entitled to change their
be clear,
mind.
you do want to frustrate the Brexit vote.
No,
don't you?
let me tell you what I want. I want this country to be good, prosperous for my children and my grandchildren and my constituents, most importantly. I have always put the national interest first. I do believe we made a terrible mistake in voting to leave the European Union. I have never tried to stop Brexit. All I ask is that it goes back to the British people, because nobody else has any credible solution to this awful crisis and this mess. It's the right thing to do, especially for all those young people who will bear the burden of Brexit. And people are they're entitled to change their minds. Now they know what it looks like. Now they know it's a disaster. Now they know they were lied to by the Leave leaders, because it's not easy. It's blooming difficult.
Anna Soubry, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Richard Bergon, can I call you over?
Yeah, ask him why he's not putting forward a people's vote, which is your
That's exactly what I'm going to do. Richard Bergon from Labour. Why
You're
did
doing
Jeremy
a great job. I
Corbyn...
don't think you need her advice. It's fine.
Well, you know, it's not a bad idea as a question.
Yeah.
Why did Jeremy Corbyn not even mention the idea of putting this back to the people in his speech today?
Well,
I thought that was your policy now.
Because our priority is to get Labour's Brexit deal. That's always been our priority, and we do want a general election. We do want a general election, but in relation to the question of people's vote or public vote, that may become necessary if Parliament doesn't agree anything.
Are you in favour of it? I thought you were now supposed to be in favour of it.
Our priority has always been Labour's alternative Brexit deal, to respect the referendum but leave on that basis which protects the economy and actually builds a consensus and brings people together. But I'm clear about it. A second referendum may become necessary, for example, to stop a no-deal Brexit, or if Parliament agrees nothing. So it's very much a possibility still.
So when Emily Thornberry told us a few days ago that Labour would be in favour of a new referendum and would be campaigning to remain, was that right or not?
Well, it's right that it's one of the options.
Oh, it's only an option now?
It's always only been an option, but it very well may become necessary. It may be necessary in order to stop a disastrous no-deal Brexit. But our priority is Labour's alternative Brexit deal, which we think can bring the country together and build a consensus. So we'd encourage the Prime Minister to stop negotiating with their own backbenchers, reach out across Parliament, and let's build a consensus that can bring people together on a democratic basis and get out of this parliamentary logjam. But if that doesn't happen, if Parliament doesn't agree anything, then of course the public having their say by a general election or some kind of public vote may of course become necessary.
And just to be absolutely clear, tomorrow Labour will vote against no deal, and then on Thursday it will vote for a delay.
Yes, we will be obviously voting against no deal. It's interesting that the Prime Minister's having a free vote on that. That shows her weakness. She's lost control. In relation to an extension of Article 50, we believe it's necessary, due to the government's incompetence, to extend Article 50 to, say, the end of June, to allow for a few more weeks in order to try
and what if the
sort
European
out this
Union
mess.
says, a few more weeks, forget it? You know, they've got a European election to get on with. If you want a delay, this is a long delay.
Well, I think that if the delay takes us to before July, then we needn't take part in those European Union elections.
Yes, but if the European Union says no to a short delay and says we will only consider a long delay, you still want delay, yes?
Well, let's see what they say. But our priority is to get this sorted.
Do you have a position on that?
Our priority is to get this sorted, and...
Yes, but there's no reason to think... There's no reason to think that you'll get it sorted in 3 months.
Neither you nor I know what they're going to say to the lengthy extension of Article 50.
You as parliamentarians have been faffing around for 2.5 years.
But as
there's no reason to think you will get it sorted in 3 months.
But as Keir Starmer said just the other day, at the weekend, we could certainly live with an extension of a few weeks, say, to the end of June.
So in a choice of long delay or no deal, what's your personal choice?
Well, my personal choice is to make the priority trying to get Labour's alternative common sense Brexit deal. We believe...
that's not the choice I offered you.
We believe there's a majority... But an extension will probably be required in order to achieve anything, given the mess the Prime Minister's made of it.
But are you comfortable, for example, with a 21-month delay? Would you accept that as the price for not having a no-deal Brexit?
That's not something that we want, that kind of delay. We could live with a delay up till the end of June, because we want to bring people together, and also we want an end to this division, and people want this to be sorted out. The government has dragged its feet pursuing a rotten deal. She's been held to ransom by her own backbenchers.
Have you noticed the polls?
She's trying to hold
Have you noticed the polls
to ransom.
That you're sort of 8 to 10% behind the Conservatives? Could you have any explanation for that, as this government's in total disarray?
Well, before the last general election, we were even further behind than that, and then we had the biggest swing to Labour since 1945.
So they don't worry you?
If a general election's called, make no mistake, we can win it.
OK, Richard Bergen, thank you very much. Now, let's go to John outside.
Well, let's take a quick recap of what's happened on this dramatic night. Theresa May has lost the vote on her withdrawal agreement by 149 votes. She said there will be a free vote tomorrow on a no-deal Brexit. There could then be a vote on extending Article 50 on Thursday. Well, now, last night, the Irish Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, had to delay a Washington trip and summon his ministers for a briefing on Theresa May's last-ditch efforts in Strasbourg. The Irish border issue has been the sticking point for her Brexit plans, and the threat to the Northern Irish peace process itself was illustrated today when a group calling itself simply the IRA claimed it sent firebombs in the post to London transport hubs and Glasgow University last week. Our chief correspondent, Alex Thompson, is in Dublin for us. Alex, what has been the reaction in Dublin on the Brexit issue?
Well, yes, let's talk Brexit first off. John, Irish eyes not smiling, looking around probably for something less frustrating to focus on. Cheltenham Festival maybe, or St Patrick's Day coming up. The Taoiseach Leo Varadkar certainly voted with his feet after putting off a trip to America yesterday to celebrate St Patrick's. He's away there now, nothing more he can do but look on, nothing more the EU can do, frankly, but look on at this. He talked in his press conference this morning about chances of lifting a black cloud should the vote have gone through in the Commons tonight. That black cloud remains, and it remains very much, of course, for the Irish economy and the EU economy, as well as for the British economy, meaning for Ireland, the hugely important agricultural sector, which routes so much of its produce into the EU via the border with the north of Ireland. that question remains obviously wide open tonight. I think, frankly, the Irish are going to get on with Cheltenham and St Patrick's Day and then reassess next week. The EU in similar fashion.
So what more do we know now about these explosive packages, Alex?
Yes, John. I mean, the curious timing of this, perhaps seen in some quarters in the run-up to what's going on with the vote, which of course affects very much the border between the north and the south of Ireland. The Irish News yesterday receiving a recognised code word from what's believed to be a distant Republican group, saying that they indeed had sent these 5 devices. 3, they said 5, 4 have been recovered. They sent 3 to London on March the 5th, of course, to those transport hubs. A 4th, bizarrely, apparently to Glasgow. No history of Irish Republicans attacking Scottish targets, as they would see it. And the Irish police think this is the new IRA. That's the biggest of the distant groups. These groups come and go like shifting sands to some extent, but they are reckoned to be the most proficient and potentially dangerous of those groups. I think we've got some pictures now. This is a car bomb which CCTV caught detonating in Derry, and that gives you, I think, an indication that there are groups out there clearly capable of building viable and lethal devices. They have the capacity to build them, construct them, and to deploy them, and the will to do so. This doesn't mean that the Irish peace process is in any way feeble, but it does mean that there are threats out there to it, as we know, and those threats exist. They are real, and the police take them seriously in Ireland as they do in the UK.
Alex Thompson in Dublin. Now let's go. Krishnan, you next.
Thank you, John. Yes, with me here in the lobby is the Defence Minister, Tobias Ellwood. Your government has ceased to be able to function. Why hasn't Theresa May resigned?
I don't agree with that. We've lost a critical vote. This is a big day. It's the biggest of days, an opportunity to honour the referendum result. And for different reasons, we've not able to get it out across the line. And that, of course, is difficult for the Prime Minister, but it's also tough for Britain as well. We were trying to honour the referendum result, and a caucus in my party and others chose not to cross the line.
Your party is now hopelessly split, isn't it?
Well, there is a...
When are you going to take them on?
Well, we are having to deal with that one step at a time, if I can finish the question. First thing is that the Prime Minister has stepped up and said, let's have a choreography of events now. So because this deal has not got through and we're running out the time, tomorrow we have an opportunity to consider no deal, which I personally will vote against. I think it will be damaging our economy, damaging for security, and also damaging for our international reputation. Now, once that has happened, because the clock is running down, there'll be another question about extending Article 50.
You have to vote for that as well, don't you?
Well, because unless you want, you have no choice. If you then remove...
So you will be voting for extension? And do you think most of your colleagues will?
Well, go back to the original point. We don't have a deal now that's on the table because part of my party, this caucus, the ERG, chose not to support it. So if you want then to honour the referendum, we have to find out from Parliament what a deal would actually look like. And the Prime Minister needs to then consider that, but we need to get through this week.
How are you still in the same party as these people in the ERG?
Well, this is a good question. I'm concerned that there is a wing, a caucus in my party that is able to yield so much influence. It's not good for our party, particularly if we want to be a moderate, centre-right, outward-looking, open and involved party that's going to win general elections. We should be able inviting to all sorts of opinions, including from the Jacob Rees-Moggs all the way to myself. But you're not going to win elections if one side of that group has so much power as they've had.
Thank you very much, Tobias Ellwood. John.
Now, in other news today, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency has suspended the Boeing 737 MAX 8 from flying into or over its airspace. It joins the UK in banning the planes following the Ethiopian Airlines crash on Sunday that killed 157 people. The jets are still flying in the United States, but Australia, Singapore and Malaysia have also stopped them flying in their airspace. We also learned more today about those who died in the crash. Minnie Stevenson has this report.
This is all that's left of flight ET302 in the field south of Addis Ababa, where 157 people died. Behind each of them, families now grieving. This mother lost her 24-year-old daughter. as we learnt more British people were among those who died. Sarah Hassan Saeed and Nasruddin Abdul Qadir, mother and son, and 25-year-old Sam Pegram, an aid worker on his way to Kenya. As investigators now search for answers as to why the Boeing plane, once widely regarded as the most reliable in the world, has now been involved in 2 fatal crashes just months apart. Thousands of miles away, the UK's Civil Aviation Authority banned the Boeing 737 MAX from UK airspace, joining the rest of Europe in doing so. That, it seems, came into effect immediately. Mid-flight, one Turkish Airlines plane to Birmingham turned around and returned to Istanbul. Tonight, the safety of the plane, Boeing's most successful, is under extreme scrutiny. The 737 is the fastest-selling plane in the manufacturer's history, with more than 5,000 on order around the world. There are some crucial differences between the old and this new model. The engines are now much bigger and heavier. The nose landing gear has been lifted to compensate for changes in the centre of gravity. The planes have also had a major change to the flight electronics and software, with some experts believing this could have contributed to the crash. Specifically under scrutiny is the plane's anti-stalling system, and the fact unions say pilots weren't given adequate training.
As from the reports, what was probably happening is...
Lord Tunnicliffe, a former pilot turned peer who flew previous models of the Boeing 737, told Channel 4 News that the aviation industry hadn't acted quickly enough to ground the planes.
With the present level of pilot training and the present state of the software, I fear they are not safe. In my day, the technical training was such you felt you could almost build the aeroplane. Clearly they are doing everything they can to minimise technical training because of the time it takes.
Boeing, however, say they have full confidence in the safety of the 737, adding US aviation officials hadn't taken any further action. But tonight, the union, which represents American airline staff, has told its members not to board a 737 MAX 8 if they don't feel safe.
Minnie Stevenson reporting. Ministers are now looking at overhauling assessments for people applying for health and disability benefits, outsourced to private companies for multi-million-dollar contracts. They've long been criticised as fundamentally flawed. Now the government is finally looking to transform them. And this programme has learnt it could mean new opportunities for private companies with a potential contract worth an estimated £3 billion up for grabs. Our social affairs editor Jackie Long has this.
Always controversial.
The people that see you don't seem to have the foggiest idea of what they're doing.
People applying for the Disability Benefits PIP or ESA complained of being endlessly assessed by tests which were too rigid, too hostile, too tick box.
Disabled people have a right to an even-handed approach, and instead what they encounter all too often is a sleight of hand.
The government refined them several times, yet latest figures show 72% of PIP appeals found in favour of the claimant. So just last week, an acknowledgement that more changes were needed.
Some disabled people have said to me that they feel as though they are put on trial for seeking the state's support. Now, nobody in DWP wants that.
Amber Rudd wants a more integrated system, possibly assessing separate benefits with a single test. And that potentially means new opportunities for private companies. We've learned the proposed contract is worth an estimated £3 billion. That would be the largest single contract related to welfare reform since 2012. Outsourcing health assessments to private companies is already controversial and lucrative. Since 2012, the largest contracts include one to consultancy group Maximus, worth £595 million, two to IT services firm Atos, worth a combined £391 million, and two to Capita for £243 million. This is the latest in a series of benefit changes announced by the Secretary of State. Much is being made of a change of tone since Amber Rudd took up the post. But critics say it'll take more than a change of tone to fix an assessment system which is fundamentally broken.
We could end up in a situation where you've got more people failing to disability benefits and ending up with no income whatsoever.
You're in no doubt, though, that there should be reform.
Absolutely, there should be reform, and we are delighted that we have a Secretary of State who is engaging with that and understanding that. But simply having one assessment for 2 disability benefits is not the answer to this whatsoever.
Improving benefit assessments will make a difference to millions of people, the Department for Work and Pensions said this evening, adding that all contracts would be tested for quality and value for money.
A massive government defeat tonight, more votes tomorrow night. We'll be back here at Westminster then, but that's Channel 4 News. Join us again then.
The Backing Singers. Love every bird. Peckish Bird Food sponsors Channel 4 Weather.
Good evening. Well, the weather's looking very lively for all of us for tonight into tomorrow. That's because Storm Gareth is moving through. There'll be gale or severe gale force winds with a risk of disruption, and numerous Met Office weather warnings have been issued. So through this evening and overnight, there'll be showers or longer spells of rain and hail snow, especially for northern and western parts of the UK. Some rumbles of thunder mixed in too. And gale or severe gale force winds in places by the end of the night. And it will be fairly cool, temperatures quite widely dropping down to 5 or 6 degrees. So tomorrow then, the main story will be the strength of the wind. Widely across the UK and land, there'll be gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour, maybe gusts as much as 75 miles an hour around the coasts and hills towards the west. Bear it in mind if you're travelling. And aside from the winds, there'll be showers or longer spells of rain, heaviest in the morning, but they will tend to ease for the second half of the day, and the winds will start to come down a touch as well. Here's the picture then in more detail. This is 3 in the afternoon, and at this stage of the day for the Channel Islands along with England and Wales, the thing to notice is the number on the wind arrows. Those are steady wind speeds. You can easily double those to get the strength of the gusts, so still winds touching 50 to 60 miles an hour in some places. Aside from the winds, there'll be a good deal of sunshine at this stage of the day, but equally still the odd scattered shower the further north and west that you happen to be. Now, temperatures rising into double figures tomorrow, but it won't feel that way when you factor in the strength of the wind. Now, for Thursday, it's a repeat performance. Another area of low pressure sweeps through, so spells of heavy rain with a strong and gusty wind, followed by sunshine and showers, and again feeling chilly when you factor in that wind. Well, that's it from me. Enjoy your evening. Take care. Goodbye.
The flyers, flutterers and freestylers. Love every bird. Peckish Bird Food sponsors Channel 4 Weather.